Hi there, my name is Tim Lee. Welcome to Legacy Art Studio, my channel where I get to talk about art. And I'm really enjoying these little videos where I can talk about whatever I want. The end result being, thankfully, hopefully, we've made a whole bunch of different clips that help a whole bunch of different people. I'm a caricaturist. I've been doing caricature now since 2008. I worked at some of the largest theme parks in Orlando and resorts in Orlando and had an amazing time doing it in my youth. And now as an adult, I live in Great Falls, Montana, and I travel around Montana doing caricatures as a full-time business. So what's that like? What does it feel like to prep for an event? How do I handle certain things? That's going to be part of the topics of this video, and I hope you enjoy it. So coming up this weekend, I'm off to Kalispell, Montana, roughly about 4 hours from where I live. Now, I'm going to be taking my camper with me, and it's a camper that my wife and I use all the time. You can see it in my videos on Legacy Studio, where I've done tech reviews out of my camper. I've done video shoots out of my camper, where my camper is my studio, and all my cables are running into the camper, where I'm running multiple cameras and outputs for special events and things like that. So the camper is a beneficial tool for me, especially since I'm traveling across Montana. Only works during the summer months. I mean, even today in May, the end of May right now, we actually have a snowstorm coming in that's going to mess up a lot of the mountains that I'm going to be driving through for the next couple days. So there's always a concern when it comes to weather until you get into the summer months, and then things get a little bit nicer. But I travel summer, winter, spring, fall. I do it all. And I've driven in some pretty interesting climates, like negative 30 degrees. It was frightening. Needless to say, the world of a caricaturist who lives in Montana is far, far different than the world of a caricaturist who lives in Florida, and I used to be from Florida. The premise that I have out here, the reason why I think my business works out here in Montana to an extent, is simply because there are so few people doing it. The joke is I'm Montana's kingpin of caricature. I'm it. Now, there are a few other artists, but I don't think they market themselves quite the same way that I'm marketing myself. By creating content like this and letting you into the inner circle of what it's like to do what I do. My process is to share the stories so that I can help someone else be successful in their caricature, career. Not only am I a caricaturist, I'm also a videographer, so this works well for me. I love doing this stuff. Now, this week, I've already pulled out my trailer, which will be the first time I'm using it this season. I've looked over all of the caulking on the sides of my trailer, and I've ripped up old caulking, and I've laid down new stuff to make sure that when I'm out on the road, the chance of rain and foul weather leaking into my trailer is a little bit less of an issue. That's one of the things you need to think about. Another thing, tax write-offs. Washing your trailer and your truck are tax write-offs. The only reason I'm thinking about that is because I just did it, and I'm like, ooh, I can write off $30 for having a clean vehicle that I'm going to be taking to my event. Yes, it's tax write-off. Look for those everywhere. Write down your mileage. Big, big, big deal. Yeah, a lot of opportunities for tax write-offs when it comes to travel around where you are. Now, like I said, being a caricaturist in a rural state like Montana means I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling, and I really, really love travel. I love going to the different cities in my home state, and it is so much fun because you're always meeting new people. While you're there, you get to do new things. I love going to antique shops. I love going to smoke shops. I love going to the local smoke clubs that do like pipes and cigar smoking and stuff like that. So I get to meet and network with people, and it works really, really well for me. In saying that, this is a very interesting event I'm going to be going to because this is for a company called Baby Outfitter, and they specialize in all the accessories that a mother would need for their newborn child. And they're doing a grand reopening. This gig came from going door to door. So last time I was in Kalispell, I was doing a gig for an apartment complex. And while I was there, I had a half a day to just tour around Kalispell. So I grabbed my business cards, and I made my rounds to, I would say, 10 or 15 different businesses. One of them was Baby Outfitters on the main drag of Kalispell, and they said, you need to go to our secondary location and talk to the owner of these two locations. And as soon as I got there, she was so cheerful, and her team were so great, and they were talking about how, Caricatures would be perfect for the grand reopening ceremony. You don't know where you're going to get gigs, so stop assuming that doing walk-ins isn't going to get you a gig, because that is exactly what this gig is doing for me. That is exactly what walking around on your free time is going to do. And if you want to succeed at something, you have to go past your comfort levels to do that. So take the time. Though I hate sales, though I'm not good at sales, I am not a salesperson. I'm not going to try and talk you into a pitch. It's beneficial to at least introduce yourself. The reason why I'm getting business is because people know who I am now. If I don't go to them and tell them, hey, I'm a caricaturist for hire, they'll never know. I'll never get the business, and I'll go bankrupt. That's about the simple fact of it. So, always introduce yourself as the caricature artist. Always introduce your business. Always push yourself out there. Don't do it in a snooty salesman way. I've taken the salesman classes and courses. They have their place, but the beauty of what I do as Montana's kingpin of caricature is I simply walk into a business and say, if you have a need, I can fulfill. Here's my business card. Here's my pamphlet. I have a little one-piece bit of information that has a discount on it for first-time buyers. And it works well for me. Now, I wouldn't say I have a lot of gigs. This month is one of the better months for me that I've had in a while. May has been very reasonable for me in multiple facets of my job as a caricaturist and videographer. But the reality is you don't know where the money's going to come from next, so take the time to try it all. Try it all, network, do what you can do to get yourself out there. If no one knows who you are, nothing's going to happen. That's as simple as it is. The magic ether of our universe is not going to get you business. You must do the legwork. And I did the legwork, and here we are. Now we're going to get a bit of a gig from it. Now, I'm someone who doesn't... I'm going to be blunt and honest with you. I don't mind doing that. There are so many people who are hiding their numbers and things like that. I'm not going to do that personally. I love teaching, and personally I find the more open and honest I am, the more business I get and the more blessings I get from God, because I'm trying to teach others. So at this moment in time in my business, I ask $180 per hour for caricatures, and I would say that that is average to a little below average for what a caricaturist asks per hour. Now, I have some discounts. I have a first-timers discount, and then I also have a nonprofit discount. So depending on who I'm working with, they get a discount. Travel for me across Montana, I charge about $150 to travel flat across Montana. Wherever I'm going, it's $150. That way I can make sure I can pay my gas, I can get some snackage, I can eat a meal or so, and if I have to, I can get a room or I can rent a space to park my camper. Most of that is covered, and I try not to nickel and dime people outside of that. There's a couple other aspects I'm working on with a marketing group that's here in Montana that has hired me for a gig, 2 gigs now, and they're incredible human beings, and so I got some other facets that I won't mention at this point in time, but we're looking for ways not to nickel and dime our customers, ways to make things very simple for our clients, where we're not going, okay, well, if you want this and this, it's going to cost you this. If you want this, 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 and this, and this, it's going to cost you this. If you want to add this extra, da, 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 da. No, they don't need that. Simplicity is key. So what I do is I say, listen, I'm in Great Falls. I'm in the Cascade County area. So for Cascade County area, there's no travel fees, and there's no minimums of how long I come out and draw at your event. If it's just an hour, no problem. Now, outside of Cascade County, that's where we begin to get a little nitpicky. For instance, this gig is a minimum of 3 hours, and that is very purposeful because going to Kalispell, 4-hour trip both ways, is a lot of time. It's a lot of time. So I do a minimum of 3 hours. That way, at least one of those hours, if I have to pay extra for a camper or a hotel stay, I at least have an extra hour under my belt to do that. Now, let's talk the other reality, and this is one that comes up consistently with every single caricature gig that I do. I am only one artist, okay? And at my breakneck speed, at absolutely juicing it as fast as I can possibly go, I can draw a person every 5 minutes. And that is my record-breaking speed. I will tell you that my record-breaking speed is ugly, in my humble opinion. It is ugly. It is not a pretty caricature. It is truly just to get the job done, not to have fun with the client, not to give them the experience that they deserve. It is all about speed and all about just getting the task accomplished. I hate that. And so in my contracts, in my writers, in everything that I'm sending out to my clientele, when they read it, I specifically say our job is not about drawing as many people as possible. This will make me lose gigs because I'm only one artist. And so if I'm going to a wedding that has 100 people, or I'm going to a conference that has 500 people, or I'm going to what we just had, cruising the drag here in Great Falls, which had 400 people, over 600 cars along our downtown. Our entire downtown was full of people walking back and forth. What is the reality of what I do? Well, in 5 hours of work, and listen to me carefully on this, because this is going to sound bad, but please understand there's a difference to what I do. In 5 hours of work, I drew 28 caricatures. Just me. That's a really good number. And you're going, wow, why would I hire him if he can only do 28 in 5 hours? Well, first off, let me ask you a question, and this is not meant meanly, but this is a reality. How many caricatures can you draw in 5 hours? Can you get your speed up, and do you have the experience? My value, the reason why my chart, why I am worth this value, is because I'm not just a caricaturist. I'm also a comedian. My goal in the 5 hours that I'm drawing your clients is not just to... There you go. There you go. There you go. It's not that. When my client sits down in front of me, they are my stand-up comedy act, my guest. They're sitting down and they're getting ready for a show. And it is my job, from the start of the caricature to the finish of the caricature, to keep them talking, have them share their life, have them experience some laughter, and have them get anxious because they're wondering what I'm doing to them, and then finally, in the final boom, get that incredible relief and joy because they love what they see. My expertise is not just about making sure that they get a nice caricature, but that they have a full experience. Let me set the stage for you here. Working at Orlando's theme parks and resorts for about 8 years or so. I forget the math, and I say between 8 to 10 years. It's been a long time. In that time frame, I've had multiple people, and I would say probably on one hand, but still, I'm talking, this is a big compliment. When these people are paying $10,000 to bring their 5 children into one of Orlando's theme parks. Technically, I'm not supposed to market what theme park I worked at for my caricature gig, since I don't work at those theme parks anymore. So that's why I'm not making a very clear and concise, I worked at this theme park, kind of a thing. But for them to walk up to you, get their caricature drawn, and then come back to you later in the day and tell you, I just spent a whole day at X theme park. Had a great time, but my favorite part of the day was getting drawn by you. That's what the client is paying for. It's not always about the perfect caricature, because I can tell you my caricatures are not perfect, and in my opinion, they're not supposed to be. But the experience of getting a caricature is absolutely key. So instead of just being that guy that's going to sit down and rip out a caricature every 5 minutes, I'm there to give the client an experience. So 5 hours, 28 caricatures, that's my last gig I did. You know how happy my client was? Even though 400 people were at that event, they were thrilled. They were thrilled. It was fantastic. So The constant question that I always get before I get a signed contract from my client is, how many caricatures can you draw in X amount of time? And I tell them usually between 2 to 5 hours is roughly what a good time frame is for me to work. And I don't tell them how many I do, because frankly, every single person that's in front of me is going to get an equal amount of time to have fun. Sitting in front of me is not just getting your commission done, it's having a good time. You are getting a one seat chance to be a part of my comedy show and enjoy the experience. And so you have to have that mentality as you're selling yourself, and I hate selling myself so much, but you have to have that mentality. There is a reason why you are worth this amount of money. And yes, if you draw slower, that makes the value per caricature drop, or, technically go up. And if your commission rate per minute is going higher, then it makes the client want you less, because your turnaround per caricature is getting... But if each one of those people goes to the client and says, I love this caricature, thank you so much, and maybe your client's branding is on the paper that it was drawn on, or simply the experience gets the opportunity for the client to talk with the art person I'm drawing, there's a lot of chances to win. And in weddings and in all these different events where it's just your goal to add to the good time, caricatures are incredible. And I make this statement, and I believe in this statement very firmly, that I am the first person there, and I am the last person there. And I've been hired to do gigs that are 3 hours, and I've been there for 5 hours. Because as I'm leaving and packing up, people go, I know that you're supposed to be done, but can I pay you for a caricature? And they pay a premium to have themselves drawn in that moment. They could order a caricature from me online. No, they still want that caricature in that moment, and they'll pay a premium for it. And in my opinion, I'm not going to miss out on that. So literally in my contract, in my writers, I do say that we do offer caricatures that can be drawn later, and usually it's digital, versus being in-person drawing with marker and watercolor and the other formats that I'm trying to learn. But people who make me stick around for longer than I intended, and for longer than the clients intended. So I try to make my contract written in such a way where it benefits me and my client. If my client is really enjoying the amount of work I'm doing, usually they'll hire me for extra. Usually it's not an issue. But then there's that time where, oh, sorry, our budget's out. Okay, well, listen, I have a person over here asking me to draw 2 people for $50. You okay if I take this gig? Yeah, absolutely. We're happy for you to be here. You're still adding to the atmosphere of our event. We just can't afford to pay you your rate, but if you're making sales above the rate per hour that we would be, why wouldn't you capitalize on that? And so that's what usually works really well for me. One extra thing that is incredibly beneficial for me is a tip jar. A while back, I went and I taught caricatures at the Fellowship of Christian Magicians. It was a special conference specifically for magicians, and they were trying to teach different facets of entertainment, and they hired me to come out and teach caricature at the event. And while I was there, a buddy of mine was a sign maker, and he made me a button that I could wear that says, "Tips are accepted, but not expected. Feel free to take that." I stole it from someone else, and it's wonderful. I take that pin and I put it on the front of my art easel that's directly in their face. Tips are accepted, but not expected. I don't expect tips. But the subconscious mind of that person is constantly asking, should I tip this artist? Should I tip this artist? And I walk away with my last gig. We got $67 in tips. Another gig that I did for a nonprofit, I garnered over $100 in tips. And tips are really necessary, especially if they really want to show you how much they appreciate your workmanship, especially if they're getting it for free. Usually that means that their pockets are pretty loose and they're ready to give you a $5 tip. And so that adds up. That adds up. I took my wife out to dinner with the tips that I got from my last gig, and I loved doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because there's people who want to thank you for your workmanship and for your comedy. Why wouldn't you have a tip jar handy? So what I do is I have on my easel, and I like using a lap easel. I built it from scratch in my woodwork shop, and I got videos on that on my channel, Legacy Studio. On that easel, I have that pin so that people can see tips are accepted, not expected. And then right behind me, on the floor right behind me, where the line starts, right over here over my shoulder, because everyone's looking at what I'm drawing, that line going back can easily see the tip jar right behind my left shoulder on the floor. And it's a tip jar, and it just says tips. And I leave it at that. I never ask for it. I never make mention of it. I let my work and that little pin do all the work for me. And it works wonders. It works wonders. And it really does come... I mean, think about it. Anytime you've gone to a hotel, anytime you've gone to a restaurant, anytime you've gone anywhere where you're going, should I have tipped that person? Wouldn't it have been nice to see a sign that said tips are accepted or tips are not accepted? Well, I've answered that call. Tips are accepted, but not expected. And it usually ends well for me. So don't be afraid to do that. You're not hurting people's feelings. You're not trying to get more money out of them. Remember, in my way of selling caricatures, I much prefer to have a client hire me per hour, and I draw as many people in that per hour as possible. It's more affordable for your client. It's more fun for the guest because they're not paying for anything, and you get to market your client more. You are a form of marketing for the client that's hired you. That is a surefire way to make sure that you are making money versus going to events and trying to sell caricatures per sale. It slows you down. You have to handle payments. You have to handle all these different aspects that are going to slow you down from completing the task of drawing people. And so if someone's like, can I hire you for 5 hours, but can you come out and charge X amount of dollars per caricature, which would be a number you would choose. My problem is if you're wanting more than 28 people in 5 hours, that's not going to happen if I'm charging, because I'm going to have to take 5 minutes to take a payment through my cell phone and Square app, and do I have internet connection, or can I make change, or it breaks the rhythm of drawing people. And then that means that it spoils it, and people don't stick around as much, especially because they got to pay for it. The other thing I really like about the way that I do caricatures, it has its pros and its cons, but I'll focus in on the pro for the moment, is when clients see that it is free, it frees up their mind to enjoy it. They need to feel that freedom to enjoy it, and they're thankful to the company that hired. And it's my goal to market that company and tell the person, hey, Subaru of Great Falls paid for you to get a caricature here, free of charge. You just sit down and have a good time. The instant that they have to pay for something, their expectancy of the quality goes up. But for an event caricature, it's my job to work quickly, so that means that my quality of work does drop. Now, do I think that it's not worth what people are paying for it? No, I think it's very worth what people are paying for it. Your job is to keep your speed and your quality up to par for what your client's paying for, obviously. But because people are getting free caricatures, they're not expecting quality work. I have clients who are paying $500 for caricatures from me right now. $500 for a single caricature. It's hours upon hours upon hours of work sitting in front of my digital tablet drawing for 40 hours to do one of these commissions. My clients who are paying that much in that moment are very picky and very persnickety versus the person getting the freebie caricature at the event. So as soon as money is introduced, they become more, this better be good. Not in a mean way, just what do you expect for the money you're paying? Makes sense, right? In the same breath, that is also the con. Because if I do have a paying client, if I was selling per caricature, I would slow down and I would take my time and I would enjoy the process more. I would enjoy it a lot more. When I go in with being paid per hour, the anxiety in me is I have to draw fast, have to draw fast, have to draw fast. And it is a constant feeling that can drag you down. It really can. I love doing color in my caricatures, but with the amount of speed that I have to do to draw my clientele, I don't have much time to do color. Color is a time killer unless it's paid for. And so I really don't offer a lot of color. What I'll do is I'll bring my colors with me, and I might draw the first or second caricature in color just because things are slow and no one's behind. But as soon as someone else is in line, the tension and anxiety is on, and I switch to black and whites. And because once people start lining up, they don't stop lining up. And that's where I say, when people think, oh, 3 hours is enough for you to do a gig, right? Honestly, no. I could be there all night, technically. I've had people wait an entire event, 5 hours, to be drawn and be the last client waiting in line. They're so thankful, but they spent their entire event in line. And so that's one of the reasons why one of my marketing techniques of how to sell myself is by saying, I am part of your atmosphere, I'm not your main topic. So while you might have 400 people at this event, what's really happening is I'm only going to take a fraction of those people and draw them, but the laughter that happens in my side of the room will affect the other side of the room. The comedy that happens in my side of the room and the positivity, you know how it all reacts. And it all just goes throughout the entire room. If I can create laughter, and that laughter is, what's the word I'm looking for? Contagious, and makes its way around your events, not miserable. Believe it or not, subconscious is still a wonderful marketing tool for what you and I get to do. So let's change gears back to getting ready for this event. So I got my trailer out, and got it all caulked up and cleaned up, and I tried to make sure that it handles water pretty well, hopefully. And now I'm going to start loading up all my gear. I usually buy 2 pamphlets of 11 by 14 Bristol paper from Hobby Lobby. That's roughly 60 pages or so that I'll take to an event. I want far too much of it, and I need to be ready to go with whatever I have. My markers that I usually use these days, I'm messing around with different markers, and I'm contemplating moving towards pencil because I'm also contemplating moving towards airbrush, which is an expensive move, but the quality of color and the quality of shape that you can create with simple movements of your airbrush really does do some pretty incredible things. So these days, I have to really be very careful on if I'm going to use oil-based markers or water-based markers, because if I'm doing watercolor, you don't want water-based markers. It's going to absolutely destroy your caricature as soon as you touch your wet brush to that ink. So if I'm going to be doing watercolors and I'm going to be doing colored caricatures, then I have to use oil-based markers. And so I stick with Ohuhus, which are incredible markers. I love them very much. They do a great job. They're affordable, much more affordable than Copic. And you can buy like this big box of so many different colors for like $75. It's totally worth it. Ohuhu, O-H-U-H-U-H, I think is how it is, or vice versa. Sorry, dyslexia. The second side of that is I have Prismacolor I think it's like P98 markers. I think that's what they're called. They're simply black markers with thick tips, and they're a double-sided marker. Those are reasonable for sketching outlines and things like that. I have a very firm hand, so markers like that are beneficial for me for keeping my line work low and really trying to keep my line work pretty. My backup plan is I do have Copic. Oh, I forget what they're called. I do have Copic brush markers, but they're not the Copic gray markers. They're like a bluish, smaller marker, and I forget what they're called. It's like part of their sketch line or something like that. They're more affordable. They work really well. But once again, if you are a firm hand, anything that's a brush marker kind of sucks because you want to push really, really hard, and it's challenging. Then I also have the Tombow water-based markers. I like those, but once again, the situation is they're water-based. So if I'm doing black and whites, it's not a big deal, but still, you have to decide in that moment. So I carry all of it. And then I carry a sizable amount of different Sharpies. I have large Sharpies, I have the extra large, and the Magnum Sharpies, the ones with the really, really, really big black nib, because if I'm doing a lot of black, a lot of hair, you get a woman who sits in front of you who's got this luscious black long hair, I don't want to be spending a lot of time trying to scrape in all this black, so I get the Magnum markers and things like that, so I can just go whoop, 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 and then quickly grab another marker and clean up all my little edges and things. While Sharpie markers are great for fill, they are terrible for line work. Absolutely miserable for line work. So I do not use them for that. I simply use them as fill markers. For my watercolors, these days I like Cotman watercolors, and I pull a little bit from Van Gogh. I like Van Gogh's skin tone stuff, but in Montana that can be hard to find. So order online, which I hate doing. I would love to support local more, but that's just the nature of the beast. And what else? I use a 3/4 inch brush, usually a wedge, and I can do a lot of detail work with a wedge because it comes to that point, which means I can do infinite little tiny details, finite details with that brush. It just takes a lot of practice to do watercolor. Now, if I move towards the idea of airbrushing, which I really want to do, I'm looking at a $220 silent compressor, which is not silent. It's like 50 dB, 60 dB, so it's loud. But if I can move it away from my work area, I feel like there's some really beautiful opportunities to do airbrush in caricature in my realm. Now, usually you want a more permanent setup if you're going to do that, but I really feel like I want to go that direction just because of what I'm seeing in my work as I practice here at home to try and make that happen. So that's something I'm moving into. It's not something I've implemented yet, but it's something I practice on a daily basis, and I think it's worth it because you can work fast. You can work really, really fast, and I like that a lot. I always carry a kneaded eraser. I actually still have my original kneaded eraser from my very first day of working at the theme parks in Orlando. I have my original eraser, and it still works to this day. And it's I laugh because it's got so much DNA in it, you know. But yeah, it's been a part of my entire history, and I love that it's there. And that little glob of goo does its job absolutely fantastically. Yeah, a fun thing. You find those little elements after years, and you're like, yeah, that's not going anywhere. I'm sticking with that. Setting up is where I find the most anxiety. It's sitting down and starting your first caricature because I am always so anxious. Like many actors and actresses on the silver stage, or whatever the case may be. I don't get sick to my stomach, but I get incredibly anxious because I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up for the client. I don't want to mess up for the guests that I'm drawing. I just simply don't want to mess up. So understand that, I mean, I've been doing this forever. I've been doing this forever, and yet I still get stage fright. That's the nature of the beast. And once you've got a contract, they've signed on the dotted line, it's not a failure to see in yourself that you're anxious. it's a failure to not move forward and do the job. And once you start drawing people and you see that no one's out to judge you, then your speed will pick up, your fun will pick up, and your attitude will transition to, yeah, I got this, and you'll be okay. But you have to go through the phases. You got to go through the emotions to get to that point. It's not easy, but once you get there, and especially once you get to the end of the day, 5 hours of work is a brain-bleeding day. It is exhausting, 100% exhausting, but totally worth it. Totally amazing experience, because you are making people happy every few minutes, and it's fantastic. You're making moms happy. You're making kids happy. You're bringing joy to a place. Name another job where you get to bring that much joy into a moment. I think that's absolutely incredible. So I gotta think about other details outside of it. I'm traveling across Montana. Montana's very rural. It's dangerous. We have the witching hour where we got animals that are trudging across the street at all times of the day. It's not if you're going to hit a deer, it's when you're going to hit a deer. So I take some very serious precautions. I have what's known as a go bag. It's a bag full of survival gear, from warm clothes to food rations to knives, and I have 5 different ways to light a fire if I need to make a fire. I am always prepared for an emergency scenario. Because I live in rural Montana, and for those of you who don't like guns, you're not going to like hearing this, I carry 2 weapons with me wherever I go. And I'm not kidding. I carry a hunting rifle, and I carry a pistol. And I carry them with me wherever I go, especially when I'm traveling. Now, a hunting rifle I don't take, like in town or whatnot, but when you're traveling across the country, and you're going to be the only person on the road, and you might not see anyone for 20, 30, 50 minutes or longer if the situation is dire, like in negative 30-degree weather when no idiot would be traveling on a day like that. I want to be prepared. And so I focus on preparing ahead of time properly, so that when it comes down to an emergency situation, I have the opportunity to live. So I take that very, very seriously, and I try to plan ahead. I try to overly plan ahead. I would rather be overly prepared than underprepared and in major trouble. While there are cars out on the road, and you'll always find someone, those people won't stop for you. Not always, and God forbid you're in a scenario where you can't get help. And so I always try to plan ahead for that. The other side of that is, okay, how many days you're going to be gone? Does your camper have a bathroom, which mine does not? So that makes for some interesting scenarios, trying to figure out where on earth I'm going to use the bathroom or whatnot. But it's little details like that you got to think through. How many days are you packing for? Please don't forget deodorant. The last thing that's going to absolutely destroy you having a good time and giving clients a good time is your body odor. So take care of yourself, do what you need to look attractive, to look good, and set the standard. If you are about to be on stage as a stand-up comedian, how do you want to look? How do you want to represent yourself? Well, do that before you sit down in your chair and start drawing. And do you have the right sustenance? Do you got enough water to get you through your gig? Do you got sunscreen? That is so incredibly important. Bring sunscreen, or else the back of your neck is going to turn into a boiled fish by the time this gig is done, which I have had happen, and it sucks. Don't let that happen to yourself. Plan ahead. Overly plan ahead. Be an Eagle Scout with your planning ahead, because when something goes down, it either is an opportunity for you to help yourself, or you have what you need to help someone else, which is just good marketing for you. If you can be the benefit of someone else, even if it is something completely off center of what you do, they'll remember you in a good way. That could turn into something in the future. And then, in my opinion, when it comes to marketing yourself, I'm a very firm believer that wherever you're going to, get there early, get there very early, maybe get there a day early if you can afford it and make it work for you, and do your legwork before the gig, go and visit other locations. Get your cards out, get your pamphlets out, get your discounts out, go and meet with bosses, go and meet with owners, and do the legwork. Because yes, you got this you got this gig, but that might be the only gig you get that month. That might be the only gig you get that year, unless you do the legwork and you get the word out. So I'm going to Kalispell early, and I have every intention of, once again, finding businesses and going door to door and passing out my business cards. It's a must. It is a must. And 100% you got to do it. Let's talk about signage. When it comes to events, I'm very torn about signage. Because usually my clients are like, did you bring any kind of signage? And I tell them no. Now, usually I really like what ends up panning out for me. I tell them I don't want to have signage because once people start coming my way, they do not stop. And I don't want to over-market what I'm offering. As soon as I have signage that tells people where to come, it's only going to make it worse, and I'm not going to be able to complete everyone in the amount of time I've been hired for. And I want to stop at some point in time. So having signage is good, and you should, but use it as a way to market yourself and tell a client how important it is that they understand that once you start, you will not stop. For me, in a majority of scenarios, I go to a gig, I get my gear set up, I sit down and I draw my first caricature, and usually, I don't stand up until the gig is done. Yes, I have held my bladder for 5 hours. Yes, I have not eaten for an entire day. Yes, I have gotten up and felt my legs completely locked and stiff. Because, frankly, you just don't have the time. And that's without signage. When people... You know what your main signage is? People walking around with your caricature. As soon as someone sees that, they go and they ask them, where'd you get it? Well, that guy right over there with the yellow hat. And it begins. Word of mouth does its job. So, I actually have a sign coming in today that I'm looking forward to, but in the same breath, I really don't want to use it because of making sure that I am not taking on too much work in the amount of time I've been hired for. As wonderful as it is to market people to you, you're already doing that. So keep your signage to a minimum. Make it professional. So that just like if you're shooting a movie and you're walking around shooting it with your cell phone, people won't believe you. You need to be bringing a big fancy camera with you. Well, in the same way, you're not going to draw caricatures on a notepad. Having signage is a professional courtesy towards your client. So try to look professional, but don't look overly professional to such an extent where you overpromise and underperform. You are only one artist, and to be able to draw a caricature in 5 minutes or even 8 minutes or even 10 minutes is a miracle that no one else in this room can do except for you. Remember that, because that's what makes you special and unique. So don't let that rip you down when your client's concerned, well, how are we going to get people here? Don't worry. I promise you they're going to show up, and when they do, I'm not standing back up. And I've literally said that to my clients. I've said, I'm the first one here and I'm the last one out. I will be here and I probably won't move. And the funny thing is they'll come to me and they're like, hey, food's up, you should go get some. And I'm like, I haven't moved in 2 hours. Do you see the line? I'm not moving for another 4 hours, you know. And they see how hard you're working. You're the hardest working guy in the room. But that's what makes you succeed. And that's what brings you more clientele. And that's what makes people want you back again. And so this is not an easy job. It's a fun job, but it's not an easy job. It comes with a lot of stress. It comes with some pretty serious anxiety because you don't want to underperform. But when you get it right, and when you market yourself well, and when you do it humbly, the results are fantastic. And the money is really, really reasonable. Really reasonable. If I can do 3 or 4 gigs a month, I'm doing okay. I'm paying a bill or two. I'm able to handle things. Between my wife's work and my work, we're okay. We can go out to dinner every now and then. This is a great gig, a great money, and it's not something that's going to be taken over by AI anytime soon. The reason why you are hired is not because of your caricatures, it's because of your personality. Now, the client doesn't know that until the day of the event. They think they're getting caricatures. But if AI was so poignant that they would simply download an app and hold an app up to someone, here, get your free caricature, where's the fun in that? No, you are providing the experience. The experience is the key part here. And that's not going to go away. That's simply not going to go away. So that is why dealing with the anxiety is so absolutely important. When you deal with the anxiety and you get into the work and then you finally start finding your rhythm and you start having fun, all that anxiety dies away and then you're in it and you are your comedian doing your role. And it is so much fun. But you got to go through a little stress to get there. That's just the nature of how our business works. It's not always going to be easy, and things are going to go wrong. And when they do, breathe in, breathe out, keep going. It's only going to last you a couple hours. You can do it. You can do it. And if you properly handle your clientele, you properly handle your guests, you properly handle the person sitting in front of you, you will walk away successful. And with a nice full tip jar and people laughing and enjoying it and coming to you saying you're the best part of this event. In my rider and contracts, I say I'm looking forward to being your most favorite part of your own event. Set the standard. Set the standard high while making sure that you're stipulating all the important things like, hey, I'm not drawing people every 5 minutes because they're ugly. I'm drawing people every 10 minutes because they're there for a good moment, and the laughter that's going to happen and flex through your entire event is totally worth it. So, a question that I get asked a lot is, would you come out for free and sell your work on location? For me, the answer is usually no. In Montana, at events where you're dealing with a couple hundred people, you will be very challenged to make a profit. And so working at theme parks in Orlando, I found certain days where I'm working at the largest theme park in Orlando and I'm walking away with zero. Not only that, I'm walking away with a negative number because I had to pay for my gas, my tolls, getting on the Florida Turnpike and stuff. I had negative days at the busiest theme park in the world, technically. How am I going to do in rural Montana? So that's why my marketing technique is to sell to my client per hour and give everything for free to my guests. That's my preference, and why in my writer I literally have I have an FAQ on my website, a frequently asked questions on my website, and it says, will you come out to our event and draw for free and charge, our clients? And my answer is, it's not feasibly profitable for me to do that. And it has not ended badly for me. I've never had a negative situation where that's turned on me. So far, this has been the best month in my little business. May has been a very good month and a busy one. And I have stuff scheduled in June and in August. And all we can do is pray, hope, have a little bit of faith, and keep trusting that God has a plan and just keep going. And I'm overjoyed at how things are going. The reality is a pretty simple one. What I do as a caricature artist here in Montana is simply filling a void that no one else is filling. That's the reason why this is working to an extent. Mainly because I see a need and I'm fulfilling that need, which not a lot of people can fill. That's the only reason why businesses continue and succeed. At the point in time that is being fulfilled elsewhere, your business falls. That's why I think personally that I'm having more success up here in Montana than I probably would down south, because there's a lot of artists down south. There's only, that I've counted so far in my personal journey, I think there's only 3 caricature artists in Montana, as far as I can tell. And I would argue that I am the kingpin. I market myself in such a way where it would seem like I'm the only one. There are people come up to me and like, I saw you at the fair, and I'm like, you definitely didn't see me at the fair because I don't do fairs. Let me make mention of that, by the way. Let me make mention of that. A lot of people ask me if I do fairs, and I don't. I make an effort to be a more niche businessman. I want to be known for higher quality work and doing higher quality gigs. So I don't go to week-long fairs. I'll do small niche fairs. I love small niche fairs. I love cosplay fairs. I love corporate events and things like that. I love that kind of stuff. I think that's great. And if I can have a client hire me per hour to draw in their booth or whatever, even better so. One thing I don't do is like week-long fairs, because the dynamic changes from you being hired per hour or you selling your work there to you having to pay a vendor fee to even be there. And then on top of paying a vendor fee, you might even have to give a cut of every sale that you make to the fairgrounds. And I find that unnecessary and ridiculous for me personally. So that is why I don't do fairs. I want to be hired for very niche things. I want to be hired for very specific things. I want to look and feel like a higher value, and I want to give and overgive as much as possible in my marketing for whoever's hired me. With Cruising the Drag and Subaru, that hired me to come out and draw, on in their car lot, trying to get people to Subaru. I made 2 videos on my YouTube and on my Facebook saying, I'm at Subaru, it's a free event, you can come get drawn by me for free. And I had 4 people come out because of my post and get their families drawn, and Subaru was grateful. My goal is to do more than any other artist is doing in marketing for my client, and in the process make myself seem more niche, experienced, and worthy of higher class events. Because the reality is, if you are having to charge less to get more gigs, the people who are more picky are the people that are looking for deals. Because they're really scrimping to give you that money, so they want the highest value they can get for the smallest dollar value. When you work with a larger client with a bigger pocketbook, they aren't as picky, and they're just thankful that you're there doing your best. That is a much better situation for everyone involved, and that is my preference to do that. And so I am willing to work at a higher dollar value, which sounds great, but what it really means is I'm losing a lot of opportunities with smaller, more affordable clientele because they can't afford me. I'm losing all of that for the opportunity of putting myself in the wheelhouse of being a niche kingpin of Montana when it comes to caricatures. That's just, you have to set your standard, and you have to live by that standard, and you have to exude that standard, and it's worth doing. If you keep offering discount after discount just to get your gigs, I get it. I really get it. But at a certain point in time, you're going to be dealing with someone who's so picky they will not be happy with the end result of what you can offer, and it's not worth the pain and agony to make that happen. I would much rather wait for a higher paying gig for a more understanding client who will be very thankful once I'm there and have me back once they see my workmanship, versus someone who doesn't understand the value that they're getting for the dollar that they're paying and don't even understand it once the gig is done. So set your standards, live by your standards, and then prove everyone wrong that thinks that you are thinking too highly of yourself. Prove the naysayers wrong. That's the nature of it. Well, I think that's enough for this video. I do hope that I've maybe garnered a couple questions that you would like to ask, and if that's the case, leave them in the comments below. I find I love answering your questions more than I like trying to come up with topics off the top of my head. So please ask your comments down below, leave your comments down below. Love hearing from you guys, and just thank you so much for supporting my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So God bless you. Keep it crispy. 1 Tim 4:12. You know, I like to say that a lot on my videos, where we keep the main thing the main thing. The only reason I am succeeding is because I have the blessings of Christ, and that's the only reason I can move forward and continue to be somewhat profitable in this business. He opens the doors. I just need to do my legwork to do my fair share of what needs to be accomplished. The end result is everyone gets blessed. My family gets blessed, my clients get blessed, and I get blessed because it's such a fun job, such a fun lifestyle that I get to do, that I've always wanted to do, and here we are. No employers, it's all me, and it's so encouraging and rewarding. So live your life to the fullest. Shoot for your dreams. Prove people wrong. It's worth it. It's worth it. And we have a long way to go. So I love you guys. I'll see you next time right here on Legacy Art Studio. Thanks.